Today's pressure canners are lighter in weight and easy to operate. If used properly, it won't blow up and shoot the contents to the ceiling. I am Megan Baumler recording for Suzanne Dreesen, University of Minnesota Extension food safety educator. In this Pressure Canning 101 Don't Be Afraid module, I will review the steps for safely using a pressure canner. Pressure canning is the only safe method to can vegetables, meats, poultry, and fish with acidity levels above 4.6 on the pH scale. A minimum of 240 degrees Fahrenheit is reached in a pressure canner. This temperature destroys the spores of Clostridium botulinum, the bacteria that causes botulism. The processing time and temperature is critical to rid of these spores. Pressure cookers are different than pressure canners and are not recommended for home canning. A pressure canner has a lid that locks into place to prevent steam from escaping. The lid has a vent and pressure is measured either by a weighted gauge or a dial gauge. A weighted gauge measures pressure at set levels, 5, 10, and 15 pounds. Weighted gauges jiggle or rock several times a minute when they are maintaining the correct pressure. A dial gauge measures pressure in 1-pound increments. All pressure canners operate differently, so be sure to read the directions for operating your specific canner. Because the dial gauge has movable parts, it needs to be tested yearly to make sure it's working properly. Weighted gauges do not need to be tested. National Presto Industries tests gauges at no charge. Contact them via email, phone, or online. They also have experts available to answer your pressure canning questions. Using a pressure canner can be intimidating. In the next slides, I will review 20 easy steps to use a pressure canner. You may want to pause this video and search for Using Pressure Canners from the National Center for Home Food Preservation website. Keep these steps handy and refer to them before you begin using your pressure canner. The first step of pressure canning is to place a rack in the bottom of the canner to prevent the jars from directly touching the bottom of the canner, which could cause them to break. Pour 2 to 3 inches of simmering water into the canner. A few recipes call for more than 2 to 3 inches of water, so be sure to follow recipe instructions exactly. If you'll be filling the jars with raw food, which is called raw pack, heat the water to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. If filling the jars with hot food, called hot pack, heat the water to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Step 2 is to use standard home canning jars free of chips and cracks. Do not use mayonnaise jars or other commercial jars for pressure canning. These jars may be acceptable for water bath canning, but will break during the pressure canning process. Preheat jars to avoid thermal stress on the jars as they are filled with a hot liquid. Step 3 is to remove jars from the pot to fill with product. A jar filler is a handy tool. After the jars are filled to the correct headspace, release air bubbles and trapped air. Insert a clean, thin plastic spatula or knife into the filled jar, gently lifting up the contents. Don't use a metal knife because it could scratch the glass and weaken it, which could cause it to break during the processing. Readjust headspace according to your recipe. Wipe the rim with a damp cloth. Step 5 is to place new clean lids on the jars. Cover a lid with screw band and tighten just until you feel resistance. Do not over tighten or the lid may bulge because it was too tight to release air. You're now ready to load the canner with filled jars. A double layer of jars may be used as long as there is a rack placed between the layers. You can mix pints and quarts if processing time is the same. If the time is not the same, then the contents of the jars with a shorter processing time will be overprocessed, but still safe to consume. Fasten the canner lid with the weight off or the petcock open. Step 7 is to turn the heat on high. Heat until steam flows freely from the open vent port or petcock. Let the steam flow, exhaust, or vent for 10 minutes. The canner must be ventilated for 10 minutes to drive air from the canner so that it will pressurize. If you forget this step, you will be frustrated because it will take forever for your canner to pressurize because you forgot to vent the canner. In step 8, after steam flows for 10 minutes, close the petcock or place the pressure regulator on the vent pipe and let the pressure rise to the level indicated in the recipe. Start timing the process when the correct pressure is reached. Be sure to select the appropriate canning pressure based on the elevation where you live. In Minnesota, choose processing times for 1001 to 2000 feet. Processing times were adjusted due to an increase in foodborne illness, so make sure you use the processing times from resources that are dated 1994 or newer. Operate the dial gauge canners at 11 pounds pressure and weighted gauge pressure canners at 15 pounds. Maintain the pressure at a steady level by adjusting the heat source. Fluctuating pressure can cause jars to lose liquid and damage the seals or lead to underprocessing or unsafe food. If at any time during the process the pressure drops below the level for safe processing, bring the pressure back up and restart the timer for the entire processing time. In step 10, when the process time is up, turn the heat off. Now let the pressure drop to 0 on its own. This could take up to 1 hour. Do not force cool the canner. Force cooling with cold water will cause the jars to lose liquid and may damage their seals. This will also lead to underprocessing and an unsafe product. When the pressure drops to 0, remove the weight or open the petcock. Wait 10 minutes before removing the lid. In step 13, it is now safe to open the canner. Lift the lid away from you so that you don't get burned by hot steam. Use a jar lifter to remove jars. Place jars on a padded surface or rack. Leave at least 1 inch of space between the jars. Cool jars for 12 to 24 hours. Before storing, check the seal by pressing down on the lid with your finger. If you hear a click, it did not seal correctly. Refrigerate any unsealed jars. For sealed jars, remove the bands. Wipe jars and rims with a damp cloth. Label with the date and the name of the product. Store jars in cool, dark place around 50 to 70 degrees. Before serving, check the seal and check for signs of spoilage. Do not consume if the seal is loose or if there is any indication of spoilage. The last step is an extra precaution. Before serving pressure canned foods, boil the product on the stove for 11 minutes before eating. Follow these 20 steps to confidently and safely pressure can food. Happy canning!